This is what the job looks like. A door, a breaching charge, and 4 men who get 1 attempt. Now here is what you are not allowed to see. The unit that does it best. The United States Army has never officially confirmed that 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment-Delta exists. There is no public roster. There are no official photographs of an operator. Nearly 50 years of missions the government still will not describe. But their weapons are documented because the men who carried them eventually talked. And one of those weapons is sitting in a civilian gun safe in America right now. Legally owned. Fully documented. We will get to it. This is what Delta Force actually carries. Start with what makes this unit strange. Almost every soldier in the American military is handed a weapon. Delta is not. From the day it was founded in 1977, the unit has kept its own gunsmiths, armorers whose job is to take a production firearm and rebuild it around one man's hands. Not accessorize it, rebuild it. Triggers cut down, safeties added, frames replaced, parts fitted to tolerances no factory would attempt on a production line. That single fact explains this entire arsenal. 5 weapons across 5 decades. A pistol the unit essentially manufactured itself. A submachine gun adopted because of a television broadcast. A carbine that went into the worst firefight of its generation, already a generation out of date. A rifle Delta could not buy, so it had one built. And a sniper carbine that ended up for sale to the public. Everything you are about to see is a weapon somebody in this unit refused to accept as issued. Nothing in this video is footage of Delta Force. There is none. What you are seeing is the hardware, real and photographed by the American military. Chapter 1. The 45. For most of Delta's history, the pistol on an operator's hip was a Colt 1911, chambered in .45 ACP. A design John Browning finished in 1911. In an era of polymer frames and 15-round magazines, the most selective unit in the American military carried a 100-year-old single-action pistol that held 7. That was not nostalgia. It was arithmetic. A former operator who served 10 years in the unit described his own pistol in detail. Match-grade tooling throughout. A magazine release and slide stop raised so they could be worked without shifting his grip. An ambidextrous thumb safety. A magazine well beveled so a reload could not catch. And a trigger cut down to 2 pounds, roughly a third of a standard service pistol. Read that list again. Every item on it removes a fraction of a second or removes a way to fail. That is what the unit's armorers were actually building, not a better gun, a gun with fewer opportunities to go wrong. And the unit did not insist on Colt. Frames from other makers were entirely acceptable because the frame was raw material. The weapon that mattered was what the armorer did to it. The same veteran said that in 10 years, he never knew a single man in the unit who chose to carry something else. Not a Beretta, not a SIG. The 1911 was simply what you carried. A pistol is a last resort. It is the thing you reach for when the primary has failed, and the problem is already 3 feet away. Delta's answer to that moment was a weapon so thoroughly reworked that almost nothing inside it was still standard. Chapter 2. The machine gun that arrived by television. May 1980. London. Gunmen had held hostages inside the Iranian embassy for 6 days. Then the British SAS came through the windows, and for the first time in history, a hostage rescue was broadcast live as it happened, while it happened. The men going through those windows were carrying Heckler and Koch MP5s. It is difficult to overstate what that single broadcast did. Within a few years, the MP5 became the default weapon of hostage rescue units across the Western world. And Delta had a particular reason to pay attention. The unit was not built as a general-purpose commando force. It had already existed for 3 years by then, founded in 1977 for exactly this kind of work, and modeled directly on the SAS. So when the unit that set the standard for your entire profession went through a window on live television carrying a specific weapon, that was not a trend to follow. That was your own job description, demonstrated by the people it had been copied from. So the MP5 came in, and the Walther MPL the unit had been using went out. The reason was control. The MP5 runs at roughly 800 rounds per minute against the Walther's 550, and, the part that actually matters, it fires from a closed bolt. That sounds like a technicality. It is not. On an open bolt weapon, pulling the trigger releases a heavy moving part that slams forward before the round fires, and the whole gun shifts as it goes. On a closed bolt weapon, nothing moves until the round leaves. The sights stay where you put them, which means an MP5 can be aimed like a rifle. In a room with hostages standing in it, that is not a feature. That is the entire requirement. If you are the kind of viewer who stays for trigger weights and barrel lengths, this channel was built for you. Subscribing is one tap, and it tells us to keep going. Chapter 3. The Carbine at Mogadishu. October 3, 1993. Somalia. What was planned as a raid lasting under an hour became 18 hours of urban combat, and it remains the defining engagement in this unit's public history. And the weapon Delta operators carried into it was by then a museum piece. The Colt 723 was a compact carbine built on the M16 family, a 14.5-inch barrel, a telescoping stock, and a design lineage running straight back to Vietnam. A former Delta operator, Larry Vickers, has described in detail how heavily the unit used them. Optics were aim-point red dots, moving from the 2000 to the 3000 and 5000 by the time of Mogadishu. And the stocks were modified by the unit's own armorers so that each man's length of pull was correct while wearing body armor. So the best-equipped soldiers America had walked into the worst firefight of their generation carrying a Vietnam-era design with a red dot bolted on. Why? Because it worked, it was short, and every one of them had been rebuilt around the man carrying it. Delta was not chasing new. It was chasing familiar, a weapon whose every behavior was already known. Chapter 4. The Rifle Delta Could Not Buy. By the late 1990s, the M4 carbine had become the American standard, and it had a known weakness. The M4 vents propellant gas directly back into its own action, which means the mechanism is fouled by every round it fires. Run it short, suppressed, and fast. Exactly how this unit runs a carbine. And it runs hot and dirty. Delta went looking for something better and could not find it on the market. So it went to Heckler & Koch and had one made. The result was the HK416, and the design brief is visible in every choice it makes. It keeps the M4's controls, its magazines, its manual of arms, the entire muscle memory a man has spent a decade building. Nothing an operator already knows had to be unlearned. What changed is underneath. The gas system was replaced with a short-stroke piston, so combustion gas drives a rod for an inch and stops there instead of being piped back into the receiver. The action stays cooler, it stays cleaner, it keeps running when it should not. The unit adopted it in 2004 and favored a very short configuration, a 10.4-inch barrel. That is a deliberate trade. A barrel that's short gives up range and buys something this unit values more, a rifle that fits inside a vehicle, a stairwell, or a bag. Then the rest of the special operations world followed, and the 416 became one of the most recognizable rifles of the last 20 years. Sit with that for a moment. A unit the Army will not confirm exists went to a German manufacturer, described a weapon that did not yet exist, and the result became a global standard. There are not many rifles on this list, a single unit, brought into being. This is one of them. Chapter 5: The Rifle You Can Buy. Around 2012, Delta went back to a manufacturer with another problem. The unit wanted sniper accuracy in a rifle short enough to clear a building with. A precision weapon that could work inside a stairwell. Knight's Armament built it. The rifles were based on the SR-25 family, chambered in 7.62 NATO, and the unit called them Enhanced Military Carbines. Sniper-grade accuracy, carbine length. Then something almost absurd happened. Not long after Delta took delivery, Knights released an improved handguard. The unit sent its upper receivers back to have the new one fitted. And Knights, sitting on a pile of returned uppers that had come off rifles belonging to a unit that officially does not exist, mounted them onto new semi-automatic lower receivers and quietly sold them on the civilian market. They have since turned up at auction, which means the promise at the top of this video is literal. Somewhere in the United States, there is a gun safe in an ordinary house holding an upper receiver that was carried by 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment-Delta. The owner has a receipt. The Army has never acknowledged the unit that used it. So what does this arsenal actually say? Look at the pattern: a 100-year-old pistol rebuilt by hand, a submachine gun adopted from a television broadcast, a Vietnam-era carbine carried into 1993 because it was familiar, a rifle that had to be commissioned because nothing on the market was good enough, and a sniper carbine that escaped into civilian hands through a paperwork accident. Not one of these weapons was chosen because it was new. Every single one was chosen or built because a specific man had to be able to trust it in a specific second. That is the entire philosophy of a unit that measures success in fractions of a second and never talks about any of it. The Army will not confirm they exist. Their gunsmith's work is sitting in a private collection, and that is as close as any of us will ever get. If you want the wider picture, the weapons carried across the whole of American Special Operations, that breakdown is on your screen right now.